Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another show of A Mexican Crossing Lines. You're going to watch Psyop show, episode 5. Psyop BS, episode 5. We've done 5 of these already. The original podcast was only 9. We're up to 5. We've barely scratched the surface. So let your friends know. We're streaming on YouTube at Duke1517 and on Facebook at 88.1 Fargo Moorhead and on Twitch at A Mexican Crossing Lines.
Yes, unfortunately, Duke, when there aren't journalists around that are willing to get their hands dirty and, roll up their sleeves and actually do some investigative work, we have to come in and do that work for them. And I looked at these people that produced this poocast, and they're young. They look wet behind the ears.
Oh.
But I guess I just expected more from the new generation of journalists. I worked at training a lot of journalists. As you went with me to the
definitely
different universities here, and this is just really shoddy work.
Yeah, well, they don't aspire too much, And plus, there's a lot of really bad journalists out there, and it's a kind of a dying field, because people need to diversify and new skills, write, do video, do photographs. You can't just go to journalism school and learn how to write. You need to do a heck of a lot more. And you need to learn how to research and be accountable. I don't think they're teaching that these days.
No, I think it's a little bit more than that, Duke. I think that when you have people that fail this badly at doing the one thing that they're supposed to do, which is the journalism part.
Yeah.
Checking, verifying, even just doing a little bit of Googling,
Yeah.
They really fell very, very far. The bar is very low for what they accomplished here. And in terms of the production quality, the sound, the research, really none of it's there. And the fact that they had so many people that they were collaborating with that are supposedly researchers and experts, I'm using air quotes again, in their fields, like Dr. Hassan being an expert in his field of cults.
Yeah.
It leaves a lot to be desired that the folks that put this together did such a poor job. And I'm going to cover who that is once again.
Oh, yeah.
Because in order to really get down to the bottom of this poocast and why it's so terrible, I think that part of it is just they're weaponizing their incompetence.
Yeah.
And using their incompetence to do more harm than good. Mm. And if that is not the case, then they deliberately are platforming a slanderer and a liar, and they're doing it while they're stealing our content.
Exactly.
Our copyrighted material and using it to slander us, which I think shows an element of maliciousness behind this crew that put together this podcast series with Wes Clark Jr. called American Psyop. Mm-hmm. And if you've been listening to me for the last 5 episodes, that is what I have been focused on doing, is uncovering who the people that produced this poo-poo are, what is behind them, and trying to understand for myself and for my audience where this information went wrong. Mm-hmm. I can't call it anything close to reality or facts because it just simply is not. So once again, we're going to start off with the people that produced this show. And the first person in that list is journalist Emily Bix. The show is also edited by her boyfriend, possibly her fiance, Jack Bryan. Also produced by Stacy Scher, Jack Bryan, and Marley Clements. And executive produced by Grant DeSimone and Brent Meisalis. Now, I did show you some pictures of Miss Bix previously. And she did not look like the picture I just showed of her with her auburn hair,
Oh, yeah.
her brunette hair, her dark hair. But in this website where I did find this image of Miss Bix, looking like a very skinny white girl.
Yep.
There's a bio that goes along with it, telling us that Miss Bix is a famous movie actress.
Oh, really?
Born on July 10, 1986 in the United States, and that she is a millionaire.
Really?
Yeah, she's worth $5 million, according to this
Wow.
bio.
Huh.
And that she writes episode recaps of shows like Scandal and Homeland for Refinery, which is a magazine, entertainment magazine.
I
There's
see.
a lot of people that we have come across in this whole, spectacle that they
Yeah.
put on in Standing Rock. Because it was now, looking back on it, it was very much a staged event
Mm-hmm.
with people that were paid to come in and play roles. Many of them actually were B and D list actors.
Yep.
Some of them were other types of entertainers like rappers, and you had all sorts of, performers, dancers, all sorts of folks that we ran into.
Mm-hmm.
And what I realized through the podcast of this show, or this,
poocast, you mean?
this poocast,
Yes, yeah.
American Psyop, is that Wes Clark is now telling on himself more than ever and really divulging a lot of the secrets that he kind of kept close to his vest when I was interviewing him.
Yeah.
He didn't let anyone know that all of the things that he was saying about how he was on a spiritual journey was really empty, was really a bunch of poppycock, because this was not a real religion. As he tells us in American Psyop, this is all part of a cult called the I Am cult.
Yeah.
He never talked about a cult. He never talked about being in a cult. Neither did Desiree Kane.
Yeah.
But for some reason, despite the fact that these people claimed that they were in a cult and that they were surrounded by people that were in the cult, that this guy that brought them out there, one of the main people that were in his home for weeks at a time before he went to Standing Rock, that really sucked him into the cult, was James Martinez. And that this guy had later on went to work very closely with Sean Stone and Robert David Steele and a bunch of other people in the cult,
Yep.
the I Am cult. And somehow he never brought this up at the time. But I think he was trying to obfuscate a lot of things. So I will give him the benefit of the doubt for the moment and believe that he was aware of the fact that he was in a cult at the time, and that Desiree Kane was also in a cult, and everybody there was in a... Were you in the cult?
No, I wasn't in the cult.
You didn't make it in? Did they not recruit you, or what?
No, I guess I missed that meeting, I didn't join in. No, in fact, when we look back and we go through our old shows, which we're playing on Mexican Crossing Lines, I'm seeing the behavior of the people that say they were in a cult, that they're not acting like they're entering a cult. And all the time that they're there, those aren't the characteristics of someone getting sucked into a cult. So I don't know where this stuff came from for their current story, but it's nothing I saw in the past.
If it's true that they're all in a cult, it's interesting that they would be writing essays with Dave Troy and doing these poocasts and working with Dr. Hassan to try to get people out of cults. When you're still in recovery from being in the cult, you're working on helping people get out of the cult. I'm confused.
Yep, exactly.
Maybe it's just me. Maybe I just don't know enough about cults. But you know who does? Danielle Mastinet Young. This person was in a cult, and then they studied through their military service, through intelligence, being somebody that was basically investigating people that are in cults, and they went to university to, I believe they got a Harvard degree in this field so that they could understand it. And it's very interesting that this woman, Danielle Mastinet Young, tells us about the importance of the figure of a skinny white woman.
Yeah.
Like Miss Emily Bix.
Huh.
Like Maggie Day.
Oh, I suppose.
Like Seven McDonald. Like Frances Fisher. So many of these recurrent themes that we see over and over again. And she also said that the basis for a majority of these cults is white supremacy.
Oh.
Yeah. That's what's really behind a majority of the cults. It's white supremacy. Now, you may ask, what about the cult of the Moonies? They're from Korea. White supremacy?
What about the cult of the Moonies?
Is adopted all throughout the planet. Yes, it can happen anywhere in countries and within groups of people that do not identify as white but uphold white supremacy, such as the Moonies. So, without further ado, I want you to hear from Miss Danielle Mastinet Young about how those cults are founded in white supremacy and the role of the skinny white woman.
Okay, I'm going to put this all in one video because people are only getting snippets of the conversation. So I am Daniela Mastinet Young. I am a scholar of not just groups and systems, but I focus on extreme groups and systems, like, for example, a cult, like, for example, terrorist groups. And then I also, especially here on TikTok, will take a lot of those insights and apply them to groups that we don't call extreme or call cults in our society. And there's an awful lot of them. So, and by the way, I come by this expertise from being born and raised in the religious sex cult, the Children of God, being in the U.S. Army and other total institutions, studying terrorist groups as an intelligence officer and deploying to war to fight them, and then getting a master's degree from Harvard in organizational psychology, right? So bringing it all together. Now, here's the controversial thing. I said cults are tied to white supremacy. People do not like that. Well, cults are about power, and cults are always trying to get concentrated and intense political power. So, for example, the Children of God sex cult performed twice at the White House. And the Moonies, just had Donald Trump come speak at their convention. And yes, I know the Moonies are from Korea. And yes, also no country is exempt from the impacts and the ideology of white supremacy. So one of the ways this ties into white supremacy is that next to the cult leader, which is often a man because they also use the patriarchy, another toxic system, to get power, but it sometimes is a woman. But there's almost always, man or woman, there's a skinny white woman next to the cult leader. She's overly dedicated, and she's also playing a very important role in the cult, and that is to whitewash the sins of the leader, both to the members and to outer society. Now, why does this matter? People say that cults are tied to white supremacy. Well, things we see in cults, we often see in regular organizations as well. The reason that it works to have this pure white woman whitewashing your crimes is because of the white supremacist concept of the pure, chaste white woman. There's not another demographic that has that subconscious thing that has been messaged about them. So, like you see in the Ghislaine Maxwell's, like you see in the Karen Zerbys of Children of God, you find this white woman is the perfect person to have next to you if you're running like a sex cult or a really, really bad organization. But also in regular organizations, often skinny white women are let into the leadership in order to whitewash the perceived sins of the organization. Like, for example, how can the Army be sexist if we had Captain Daniela Mestinek up here at the top doing the things the boys did? So yes, it ties to white supremacy.
It does. And you want to know something else that's crazy? The Moonies were at the insurrection. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Moonies were at the insurrection. And in addition to that, they were heavily invested in getting Donald Trump to stay in power again. I believe that Wes Clark tried to deflect much of what he was doing and who he was doing it with. And even as we made the connections between him working with Maggie and Winnie Wong and Desiree Kane and Seven McDonald, and he talked about how he raised money and was working with them and doing all of this stuff, he always tried to make it seem as though he didn't really know anyone, and he really didn't know anything. Mm-hmm. But also, he was always having his hands-on approach in everything that he wasn't supposed to be working with anymore, he wasn't supposed to be working on anymore. He literally told us that he left Standing Rock fearing for his life, that he went home and wanted nothing to do with anybody that had anything to do with Standing Rock because he was afraid of those people, because he felt victimized by those people, because he didn't trust anyone anymore. And yet, he was still in communication with all the people that he didn't trust. And as I look back and find more and more and more evidence of what he was saying in interviews and what he was doing post, closing of camps, he was always involved. And there was, from the very beginning, a plan to work with all of the people that were supporting Trump's campaign. And in fact, at one point, he told the witnesses in the Kathleen Bennett case, Josh and Ren, that he was supposed to be on Trump's transition team. Now, of course, because he said it to them and they said it secondhand to me, I always wondered if they misheard him or if they just misunderstood. Because how could someone who was working with Tulsi Gabbard and Evan Duke and all of these anti-fascists that were trying to make sure that, they impeached Trump and Pence and that they went out and stopped the rise of fascism under Trump, how could they be working with those people?
Exactly.
How could they be propping them up and helping them? Well, I think that was always the plan. And we were supposed to believe that they were progressives, but they were they were wolves in sheep's clothing.
Exactly.
And we missed it. Here's some examples of how Wes always intended to go on to Flint, Michigan. And this was something that he told various sources, that he was going to be going to Flint, Michigan. That was where the continuation of the camps was going to begin. But by no means was that the end. This was just the beginning. In fact, Standing Rock, he said, was just the beginning of much more that had to do with climate change and all sorts of other campaigns with veterans. In fact, in this post, you see the LA slumlords on December 6th of 2016 say that Wes Clark is a man among men, a true leader and defender of his people. He and over 4,000 other vets who remembered their oath to defend the nation against enemies, both foreign and domestic, marched and helped win the first part of this battle. And now they are on to Flint, Michigan. So this is while Wes is still presumably at camp.
Wow.
Right? On the day of the blizzard, on the day that they're all, in the casino.
Yeah.
But there are other articles and other interviews he gave. In this other publication that was done on December 5th, you see that the headline says Dakota Access protesters will focus on the Flint water crisis.
Yeah.
Not just he and the vets, but the people that went there to protest the pipeline. The water protectors, the protesters of the Dakota Access Pipeline are going to now focus on the
Flint,
water
yeah.
crisis in Flint, Michigan. And is there any of the article there? Or just okay. So next we have a quote from this article that was written by Jaquanda Johnson, and it says that the North Dakota pipeline battle may be over, but veterans and community activists supporting the opposition of the project say their fight isn't finished, and the Flint water crisis is next on their list. Quote, "We don't know when we're going to be there, but we will be heading to Flint," said U.S. Army veteran Wes Clark Jr., who helped organize veterans who joined the fight. This problem is all over the country. It's got to be more than veterans. People have been treated wrong in this country for a long time. And that's what he's doing.
Yeah.
Winding them up, winding up the people, reeling them in, and then setting them off to do his bidding. And I just want to remind folks of this image that was posted in the media of his veterans marching to Standing Rock. And this was on December 2nd. It says protectors and veterans participated in a ceremonial march to the backwater bridge during a snowstorm. In the front there, you will notice one of the people that is marching has a cape on. You see they're wearing like a cloak, a cape type of a thing over their coats, over their winter gear.
I see that, yeah.
And on the side of that cape, there is a large symbol. A symbol that looks like a star. Old-timey, almost Celtic-looking star. I don't know how to exactly describe that. What would you call that, Duke?
Celtic-looking star. I don't know. Maltese cross?
Maltese cross. It looks like almost like a Maltese cross.
Mm-hmm.
Could you push up that image? Because underneath, you'll notice that cross is at the top of a tower there, shining a light.
Yeah, that is a Maltese cross.
It looks exactly like the cross that was on the side of that man's cloak marching into Standing Rock. And it is associated with Saint Germain and the I Am cult.
Wow.
It was present right there in front of our eyes at Standing Rock, but for those of us that weren't part of the cult, we didn't notice it.
Wow, interesting.
But there it was. It says there, the Pearls of Wisdom, published by the Summit Lighthouse, Saint Germain, Master Alchemist. The Knights Templar imaginary blends a specific radicalized and romanticized version of history with the grammar of conspiracy theory. Characterized by a belief in the radicalized decline and victimization of a righteous white Christendom, a sense of threat posed by radicalized others, and betrayal by insiders. An anachronistic view of near omnipotent individual agency.
Wow.
So this psyop, if it was an operation, if it was a military operation, which Wes claims, and also part of a cult, which Wes also claims, then the fix was in from the beginning. It was all meant to be geared to that direction. And to add more depth to this, I am going to play for you an interview that Wes gave to and now retired. I guess he was fired as a radio personality. John B. Wells, an ultra conservative, anti-vaxxer, conspiracy theorist,
Yeah.
MAGA loving, Roger Stone interviewing, Michael Flynn fundraising, QNut conspiracy theorist,
Okay.
John B. Wells. And by the way, I took this interview from the website of Arturo Tafoya of the Conspiracy Distillery. You can see here from his website that he has the full interview or the full broadcast, radio broadcast. And this radio broadcast is now also available on our website, kpppfm.com, if you wish to go and listen to the entire radio broadcast of that day. I would not play it on my station.
Yeah.
You can get the sense of the tone of the person. I don't think that Wes could have confused the person he was being interviewed by as a progressive or as part of any operation having to do with veterans, like many of the people he granted interviews to while he was at Standing Rock. I think if someone had seen or heard that James Martinez and that Wesley Clark was on a program such as InfoWars, for example, right?
Yeah.
That would have been very disturbing. As it was disturbing to me to find him giving interviews about his deployment to Standing Rock to Russian television news afterwards.
Exactly. Yeah.
And as I began to uncover all of his connections to people that had to do with Trump's campaign and that had to do with the QAnon people. The people that were helping to smuggle people into the United States seeking asylum during the whole caravan thing. And all while blaming it on Democrats, all while blaming it on illegal immigration and blaming the broken immigration system that they've never wanted to be fixed so that they can continue to bring people in by the thousands to do the jobs Americans won't do while being easily exploitable and easily expendable, and many of those being children, migrant children. So I want you to be able to go and check out the full broadcast of John B. Wells from that day, if for no other reason than for you to hear that the clip I'm about to play for you, which was the full interview that was done by John B. Wells of Wes Clark Jr. and James Martinez, was not taken out of context or edited in any way by me. Second of all, I want to point out to you a couple of things, maybe more than a couple of things. But the first of those things is that this interview, you will hear John Wells say, "And now to the Dakotas," as if he were receiving a call from Wes Clark and James Martinez in the Dakotas, which is not the case.
I'm standing by in the Dakotas.
Right, because they were not there anymore. Wes Clark told me that he had left on a private plane, one of his friends' private planes, and fearing for his life. And James Martinez, in this interview that you're about to listen to, talks about how he was at the airport when he was leaving and what happened when they were getting out of town. So obviously, they're no longer at Standing Rock
Yeah.
when they're giving this interview. That means that this interview occurred after Wes Clark left Standing Rock, which would have to have been after December 7th, right? Because he was there from like the 1st through the 7th for 1 week. Second of all, I would like to point out to you, in the context of the people that produced this program, including Brent Meisalis and the Midas Touch, and all of the people with the Bunker Crew, and Miss Emily Bix and her boyfriend, Mr. Brian, excuse me, that there were so many very obvious signs, not the least of which are the hundreds, if not thousands of hours of reporting and broadcasting that we did about Wes Clark specifically, about the veterans and everything surrounding Standing Rock. Plenty of evidence there that Wes Clark was not an innocent, that Wes Clark was not the victim of anything, that if anything, Wes Clark victimized thousands of people and absconded with hundreds of thousands of dollars. That is the only conclusion that one can really draw from listening to all of the work that we did. But let's just say, for argument's sake, that this crew of people, between all of them, couldn't figure out enough ways to Google things to find the material online to show them how bad these people were. The people that they were producing their American Psyop poocast also brought it to their attention. Maybe that's why they cut Arturo Trefoya out of the whole Psyop poocast in the first place. Maybe that's why they didn't use his interviews. Maybe that's why they cut him out of the whole deal. The only way that I found out about this is because Mr. Trefoya tagged me in a question to the American Psyop crew asking why they were, he said, why they were casting aspersions upon me, throwing dirt at me, he called it, when I was the first one to broadcast the connections between all of these people and Trevor Fitzgibbons and Nora Maccabee. A question I don't believe any of them ever answered.
No.
But in his website, on his website, along with the posting of this video, you will see the following.
And here we go.
And it says, if you can make it bigger, because he has a descriptor there of this interview and of a conversation that he had with Jack Bryan about this interview with John B. Wells, someone that is very closely connected to the MAGA movement, the support of Donald Trump, the fundraising for Michael Flynn, and the closeness to the mercenaries in the Oath Keepers. And this is what he said. Arturo Trefoya asked the producer of American Psyop, Jack Bryan, about this particular interview with Wes Clark Jr., James Martinez, and John B. Wells. And even he says it's obvious when you listen to this that the voice of the person in this interview is Wes Clark. You can also hear James Martinez, whose voice I didn't recognize, but we are told by the broadcaster it is James Martinez. And I have listened to other interviews with James Martinez in the Psyop series, so I can recognize that voice. But he goes on to say that even though it's obvious from listening to this recording that Wes Clark is interviewing with a MAGA nut, QAnon nut, he says he's talking to John B. Wells, that Jack Bryan denied that this was Wes Clark.
Really?
Yeah. Even though he says it's obviously the person is Wes Clark talking to John B. Wells, Jack Bryan denied it and then asked for proof that that was Wes Clark Jr. and simply discarded
it. Wow.
this interview as being a red flag of anything possibly being wrong with Wes Clark's account of things. I think that it takes an extra measure of cognitive dissonance and willful ignorance on the part of the producers of this poocast to ignore the fact that Wesley Clark does not come with clean hands, and that Wesley Clark always intended to do harm to the people that he invited to come to Standing Rock, along with his PR machine connected to Trevor Fitzgibbons. I want to point some things out to you before you listen to this interview. It's about 30 minutes long, but I want you to listen for certain things because I think it's very telling, okay? In this interview, the first thing that Wes Clark talks about is having to meet with the North Dakota Commission for Veterans Affairs because they were upset at what Wes was doing as a veteran and that he was putting other veterans in danger, and they were going to protest him. The second thing that he says he did was to go and meet with people in the Horn. The Horn were all of those headsmen, including Menape, one of the people that had Mary Trujillo removed and taken from the custody of her daughter, Kathleen Bennett, and who said, along with many others, falsely claimed that Kathleen Bennett had abused her mother and had that family separated. He then says he meets with L'Oreal Blackshaw and a woman named Brenda Whitebull and immediately turns command over to them. Then he says he meets with people on the bridge, including indigenous media, the two-star general of the National Guard, Sheriff Laney, and a representative from Tiger Swan. In the American Psyop, the podcast, the poocast, he says Eric Prince is on the bridge. Okay? Also, James Martinez adds a lot of information in this interview talking about how James Martinez, was kicked out of camp. Kicked out of the camp. This was very dramatic because you and I were there. If somebody got kicked out of the camp, it was usually a very, very, very big deal.
Everybody talked about it,
Yeah, because nobody got kicked out of the camp. There was all sorts of people there. People that you could clearly see were people that were, elderly, disabled, blah, blah, blah. Some of them poor and homeless. We talked to many people that said that they were there because they had more access to food and housing than they did in their reservations.
Yeah.
So the fact that somebody got kicked out, it was a big, big, big deal. And he said that he was with J.R. American Horse, one of the leading people leading on actions, that was pushed out by the Horn, by the headsman that Wes met with, right? And he said, we got caught up in all of that. Doesn't elaborate. We know what actually happened because it was his veterans and the security team, the people that he put in power the moment he got there, L'Oreal Blackshaw and Brenda, that raided the camp in the middle of the night, kicked out J.R. American Horse, and confiscated people's supplies.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? That's these are the people that did that. Wes also talks about how he was supposed to do a sweat lodge with Ivan Looking Horse, and then got picked up to go to a ceremony for some sick child. And it was when he got back to camp that he noticed the security patrol. He did a patrol of the camp with security and the headsman, and he saw a guy on crystal meth. Wes noticed there was rampant drug use at the camp, and he talks about it here. Okay, so much for the whole spiritual awakening. Mind you, Wes converted to Christianity because he was not a believer. I don't think he was a Christian, but he converted to Christianity, or so he told the press and the people at the camp right before he went to Standing Rock, and he believed that he was on a spiritual quest, right? Mm-hmm. He told the American Psyop people that he was Metatron and that he was in the I Am cult. Mm-hmm. That is not Christianity, okay? That is some weird something else, but it is not Christianity. Anyway, the other thing I thought was very interesting was that James Martinez was talking about how being there was the deepest spiritual experience of his life. And it was like supernatural. He said it was an energy that he's never experienced before, and it was a shamanic experience for him. And he's been to many shamanic experiences, but this one in particular was so much more powerful than anything that he had ever experienced. This is also a guy that's in the I Am cult. So whenever I listen back now, and I know that James and that Wes are claiming to be part of the I Am cult, that these spiritual experiences have to do with their cult and not with God and not with Christianity. And the other thing I really want you to listen for is the way that he talks about Trump when he is closing out his interview. Listen closely for the way in which he props up Tulsi Gabbard, who we now know is a right-wing, ultra-right-wing MAGA. Mm-hmm. And as Hillary Rodham Clinton once said, a Russian asset.
Yep, exactly.
We know Tulsi Gabbard is in the pocket of the Russians now. But at this time, Wes said that from the time that he got there to the time that he left, no one got arrested for any activities that he was involved in. That's a lie. Lots of people got arrested for activities that he was involved with, that the leadership of his veterans for Standing Rock were involved with, and he didn't take any responsibility for any of it. Like a coward that he is, he ran away in a private jet. Mm-hmm. He said that they were granted an easement right before they got there with joining Tulsi Gabbard, and there weren't really any fights that he could see. So he got out of there with no debts. No debts. Mission accomplished. No, mijito. Estás bien pendejo. If you think that you do not have a debt to the people that were defrauded by your Standing Rock veterans, if you don't think that you owe a debt to the people, like one of our neighbors that almost got cut in two.
Oh, that's right.
Driving out there to support because he was a veteran and he actually believed in the hoo-ha coming out of your mouth.
Yeah.
You are sorely mistaken. And if you don't feel like you owe a debt to the people that you put in an early grave and those that you sent to jail for no reason, you are not an honorable person. You are not an honorable man. And you do not represent the veterans of this country. And, you know, this John B. Wells obviously has interviewed Wes before. So listen for that, because he says, welcome back.
That's right.
This is not a one-off. He has been on this show before. He has been in cahoots with the people that went on to coordinate through these radio programs and these media people throughout the country. John B. Wells's show, I think it's called Caravan to Midnight, was the 6th highest rated show in the country.
Wow.
We also saw Tori have a very popular show throughout the country where people were listening to people like Stuart Rhodes of the
That's
Oath
right.
Keepers and Michael Flynn, and they were taking their marching orders, as it were, for what they were going to be doing from these media people. That includes preparation for protests. That includes the stuff that you saw during the pandemic, protesting, any kind of measures to protect people, the kinds of things that you've seen in schools, the banning of books, the overturning of Roe v. Wade, all of that. You can see the messaging coming from people like John B. Wells. And somehow it slips through the mind of people like Jack Bryant, the Midas Touch, and the people producing and promoting this ultra right-wing, MAGA connected nonsense as progressive, as a victim. I don't know how they could be that willfully ignorant. We have a saying for that. Eres o te haces. I don't know if they're pendejos or if they're weaponizing their incompetence to attempt to seem like pendejos. But there is no way that you could listen, even for 5 minutes, to someone like John B. Wells and mistake him for a progressive, mistake him for anything other than a Q-nut, than a MAGA spouting moron. And when he is talking to this man, this is what Wes says about Trump, about the prospects for the future of this country. He says that he explains that Tiger Swan was there and that's a mercenary company that operates for the U.S. government out of the southeastern seaboard of the U.S., and that there is a journalist named Jeremy Scahill over at The Intercept that's written a lot about them. He directs you to The Intercept, which I told you was intercepted by the right, Glenn Greenwald, hanging out with Winnie Wong, all of these people, messaging for Russia, for sure, among other countries. And he says that these are people good at psyops. And when he's asked about the future of our country, he says, well, hold on.
Radio silence.
Sorry.
We can't have radio silence.
He's talking about he's a straight shooter and he doesn't want people to see him as a jackass, is the words that he used. He says that he holds out hope. He says, John Wells says, it couldn't be tough for somebody like you to get a message to President Trump. And you're only one person. Heavy hitters are coming in to take charge now in the Trump administration in an adult manner. And Wes says, I hold a lot of hope for Donald Trump. He's really reset the playing board on how stuff can get done.
Wow.
I know a lot of people are scared about some of his choices so far, but I firmly believe that every human being has the potential to be good in this life. And I think he has the potential to do more good than anyone who has come before him. What?
Really?
So we'll have to see how it all plays out. John Wells says, yes, indeed. well, what are you working on next? And he says, don't know yet. I think we're going to be going up and instead of doing a protest, we're going to go and replace the people's pipes in Flint, Michigan.
Oh, yeah.
So they have clean water. And Michael A. Wood Jr. is going to be running the whole Veteran Stand organization because he had the access to all the money. What?
Well,
He's got a background doing activism and stuff. And me personally, I was just on a spiritual journey. But I'm definitely going to help Michael A. Wood Jr. with whatever he's got going on. Wait a minute. I thought he kicked you out of your own organization
That's right.
that you started and stole all the money.
mm-hmm.
So which is it?
Yeah.
Did he abscond with the money and kick you out of the whole organization and you didn't have any access to it, so you're not responsible? Or are you going to keep helping him with whatever he's doing? Which is it? This man talks out of both sides of his face.
Yeah.
And he was doing it right from the very beginning. How did you miss it, guys?
Yeah.
How did you, people that produced this poocast, American Psyop, miss all of these red flags? And apparently this interview was shown to you by one of the people you were that you reached out to produce your American Psyop BS poocasts, and you ignored it because you didn't want to look at it, because you didn't want to see what was right there in front of you. So, without further ado, here is the interview with John B. Wells of Wesley Clark Jr. and James Martinez shortly after December 7th and before Christmas, because he does end with a Merry Christmas
That's
to
right.
both of them. Here you go, folks.
Up to Dakota to just see for themselves exactly what's up with this Standing Rock standoff between the Native Americans and the feds, and they're with us again. That would be James Martinez and the inimitable Wesley Clark Jr. Welcome back, guys. Good to have you with us.
Hey, sir, how are you? Thank
Okay.
you very much. Thank you.
I warned you about the cold weather, so how cold was it?
Oh, man. Yeah, no, it was cold.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Well, look, just let her rip. When you got there, just kind of take it through, from the time that you rolled up there in your car until the time you got out, and then what? Just tell us what happened, everything.
First thing that happened was I got a call from the North Dakota Commissioner for Veterans Affairs saying he had a bunch of people going out to go against us, and he requested a meeting. So then I went inside, met the tribal elders, met the Horn, talked with all those folks, met a woman named L'Oreal Blackshaw, who was going to serve as our sergeant major out there, and a woman named Brenda Whitebull, who we were originally going to turn over command of the unit to, because there's a push from the elders that we have Native vets, especially Native female vets, in positions of command.
Yeah.
So we got all that stuff planned that night, managed to get the meeting set with the North Dakota Veterans Affairs guy down in Lonnie Langan, and we met him out on the bridge at about 3 p.m. on Friday afternoon, me and Brenda Whitebull and a reporter from Indigenous Media. And out there on that bridge was the two-star general in command of the National Guard, Sheriff Laney, this fellow Lonnie, and a representative from Tiger Swan, who just stood there and didn't say anything throughout the exchange.
Okay.
That night, go ahead.
I was about to say, both of us arrived at different times. I would say when I arrived, I was picked up by some of the relatives of the Lakota elders there, and as soon as I arrived in the car there was an interview set up for another pretty big name radio station, who I'm not going to give any credibility to by mentioning them, but there was a lot of people there against us that did not want this to go through with flying colors. Did. A lot. And I got on a radio station with two people that was pre-set up because Wesley was bombarded nonstop with duties, meetings, greetings, all sorts of things. And as soon as I got in the car to do this radio show, all they wanted to talk about The main thing was, when does the fight start? That's why they put it together. They did this kind of preemptive, pre-planned, when is the battle going to start? And I wasn't going to go there. I would not go there with them on that. I said exactly what the intent was. I said that what the purpose was, what the backstory was, what the transition is going to be, all the important matters of why they were there. They didn't want to know that. They just strictly wanted to know when's somebody going to get killed, when does the battle start, and can we talk to you first about it? And I politely ended the interview. That's it. I wasn't gonna give any gasoline into the fire.
Yeah.
Regarding that at all. Period. So that was the first thing that happened when I landed on the ground there.
Oh boy. All right. So then.
Yeah, well, we all went out there with the expectation we were going to get beaten up and put in jail. So I mean, I shot a last will and testament before I went. But when we got there, the elders pretty much told us, hey, this is about peace and prayer. So their reservation, their rules. So we were trying to get people on board with that as quickly as we could.
I had heard that
this was all further complicated by factional rivalries out within the camp itself that started to come to a head just, I think, about 48 to 72 hours before we got there. At least our advance team. And that was between the Akichita, who were led by J.R. American Horse. He was a good man. He was a Vietnam vet. And he was a guy out there helping organize vets and lead a lot of the direct actions and that, cost people their freedom and got them injured badly through the fall. They were pretty much being pushed out of the way for camp security by the Horn, which was representatives from the different individual tribes that are part of the Council of Seven Fires. So just based on the timing of when we arrived, we wound up getting caught up in all that, as did the female vets who were the two, Brenda and L'Oreal, that were directly with me in the setup on Friday and Saturday and Sunday.
I understood that there were some. We spoke with this fellow named Mike Presnell, who actually is going to go up and be part of the advisors on border security in the new Trump administration. And he was complete. He said he has some Native American blood in his own veins, and he was going to go up there. And there were about 40 feds that were going to go up there to make sure that all this rubber bullet and dog cage stuff and beating people up was not going to happen. So I never heard anything after he stated that on ARC Midnight, our radio adjunct to this program, Saturday night before last. So how was that? Did that happen? Did the Fed show up? Did the abuse stop? What happened?
Well, we were pretty much under instructions from the elders not to engage.
Right.
You see, there was a bigger issue here that we weren't really aware of when we were up there, and that was the insurance for the pipeline. Now, they have to renegotiate that whole deal based on the price of oil today versus when they first negotiated it in 2014. So these delays that are being caused are going to cost them money. However, in their insurance policy, if something's an act of God or there's a riot, that then activates their insurance policy. So the elders weren't just being kind of hopeful with peace and prayer. They had an actual strategy behind it. And that was to prevent the trigger of that insurance and also to prevent us from getting hurt or killed. So they told us pretty specifically, stay off the bridge. Spent all day Saturday trying to get camp set up, but Brenda and L'Oreal didn't get the tents in time. I think we got the first tents dropped off as the first buses were coming in. And unfortunately, those tents had wooden stakes. So you can imagine what happens when you pound wooden stakes into the ground in the freezing cold.
Yeah, not much.
Then they called a meeting for Tulsi Gabbard and the elders to speak down at Symbol College. I was supposed to get there by 6. I was helping pound in tent stakes and managed to hitch a ride down there about 7. Wait, that was Saturday night. Let me go back to Friday night. So Friday night I was supposed to do a sweat with a bunch of the headsmen and members of the elders. This elder named Ivan Looking Horse. They pick me up, and that's where I thought he was bringing me. He brought me down to 48's for a thank you ceremony, which was like a prayer ceremony to help a family that had a sick child. So we got out of there probably about 10 o'clock at night. I went back to Rossetti, walked around the camp a lot, rode around with the headsmen on their patrols, security patrols. They had a guy who was, I don't know, I think on crystal meth or something, that was freaking out that they were trying to take care of in a guardhouse. And going over all the kind of larger security concerns that were at the camp. By this time, I was about 24 to 36 hours in, was told by both headsmen and Ikitida that there were infiltrators, that there were potentially 3 weapons caches, and all this kind of information was snowballing toward a possible security problem that would present itself around the 7th.
Oh boy!
Yeah, when I was there, I met Wes later on there, and I was mostly there, flown in by the Lakota as a witness to be beside Phyllis Young, who was kind of directing a lot of the traffic. And people got to remember, this was well over 5,000 people. The weather was horrific. That put it was very difficult to deal with. I mean, you go outside for 2 minutes and your face will freeze. It was -10, maybe less than that. And the press was all over the place. The hotel was jam-packed full. There was people flown in from as far as Costa Rica. I don't know if Wes met this guy, but a World War II veteran came in a wheelchair in a storm with his wife and was rolled into the conference room. And I got to say, I don't know if Wes met him or not, because there were so many people there and all this stuff going on. He wanted to thank you personally, and he said at the end of his life, you know, at a 92-year-old man, said this was one of the best things he ever did. And there was no question that despite his age and mobility, he was going to be there for this, because it was that important to him, which was an amazing thing. Because when he rolled in, I was in the conference room and some of the attorneys and other press people were there, and everything just stopped. It stopped, and we let this guy speak, and he understood the call. He was there 100%. It was a beautiful thing to see that a gentleman of his age and going back to World War II would show up there. It was incredible, actually.
Well, that's what I'm looking for.
So
that's good to hear.
It was for me. It was like the deepest spiritually moving experience in my life. I mean, everybody out there that I was running across was kind of experiencing the same thing.
Oh, it was supernatural, John. The energy there was unlike anything I've ever experienced. I've been in indigenous cultures, and I've been in part of shamanic ceremonies, and I've done a lot of that stuff all over the world. And what was going on there, Standing Rock in that event was the center of the world because of all the issues that were at hand there. Freedom of speech, obsolescence of technology, law, treaties, violence, provocateurs, you name it, it all was happening at the same time. And I literally, when I ran into Wes, he had so many duties, and we just confronted each other with, this is what's going on, this is what needs to be checked, this is what, and so forth. And it was, we were working to see to it that the narrative and the lines of communication were perfectly clear from the people that were organizing it and the people who had the authoritative duties, Lakota Sioux elders specifically, to explain precisely without any confusion what was going on there. Because there was some press there that was completely, they were there to see the big showdown. And like I said in the beginning, a lot of people wanted that. I mean, I had film crews on me at least 50% of the time, and we spotted one of these provocateurs, and both Wes and I knew it. We knew who the guy was. We talked about it, and you could say he was a paid professional going around trying to distort the story, trying to I mean, Wes spent a lot of time putting out fires to say no.
That's what I spent most of my time putting out. Because, the danger was, once people started to get in, the security forces withdrew kind of one terrain feature back in hopes that they would get people to rush across. But they were all sitting there waiting there. We had drone footage of where they were set up in their barracks and everything else. They were just waiting for us to make a mistake. But, the real problem started to come on, Saturday night. I left the camp. I don't know, I probably was back in the hallways of the hotel, which is the only place we had comms, by about 2 or 3 in the morning. And the next day, we got up and we had our muster and went through camp and had a briefing because we had a whole counterintelligence talk set up down there with some guys who work for JSOC and others. When you get that number of people that come out, you get some real talent. And, they'd report on the infiltrator problem. There was a rumor that someone had a U-Haul full of bottles of alcohol for Molotovs that we had to chase down and see if that was real or not. And I was almost had these two kind of at odds factions in the tribe with American Horse and some of the matriarchs sealed when I found out from one of our older veterans, who I believe was a Vietnam vet, great guy. This is after they made the announcement about the cancellation of the easement, like about an hour later. I hear a report, KR is coming in the back gate. We need folks down there. Help, Clark, get down to the south gate. And I started walking down there with this guy, and he's telling me, hey, you know what we did last night? I'm like, no. He goes, oh, no one's told you, have they? Because I was unable to reach Brenda Lightbowl and L'Oreal Blackshaw all day. But apparently at about 3 in the morning, they went into the tent of about 20 of our veterans and asked for volunteers for an operation that could result in live fire, which I find stunning. They neither asked, informed me, nor anything else about it. Then they hustled up our 20 guys and used them to search different camps within Osseti for weapons. Then they used them to go essentially evict J.R. American Horse from, his position, as well as try and confiscate all the supplies and stuff that had come in that he was storing for everybody. So it put me personally in a really dangerous position once I found that out. And my counterintelligence talk came running over a dude called Redbeard and was like, you need to get out of here. You need to, put on plates and feed him out of camp. So I went up to one of the yurts and put some plates on and ditched my poncho and changed the jacket I was wearing and crawled out under the barbed wire and walked back a mile or two to town till one of our guys could pick me up. It was an absolutely insane operation. Just the security aspects and the psyops and everything else was just, it was taking up the majority of the time, making sure no one got killed out there.
They even started a rumor that 2 people did get killed there. Some people came into the conference room, said 2 of the employees of this hotel have died on the way out of town because of the storm. And I'm sitting there with senior elders, and I said, who said that? And of course, that turned out to be a lie by somebody that started that rumor. So there was this constant, okay, what's the real situation at hand? Because you got to remember, it was so cold, communications were being jammed, phones weren't working, batteries were dying in the cold, people are charging their equipment all the time, the internet was going in and out, there's constant, exposure to the cold, so delays in meeting, and all sorts of stuff was happening consistently the entire time. I mean, I spent some time with Wes, but I don't think he got much sleep when he was out there. In fact, I know that he did.
I slept about an hour a night. And the last night I didn't sleep at all. So, I think I might have slept 2 hours the first time I was in, but, and then probably 1 meal a day. But it was literally 24/7 because of the way comms were, you had to talk to as many people as possible face to face, and just keep shuttling and running back and forth between groups of people to get stuff done. But, look, everybody out there worked their ass off. And it was an adventure for pretty much all of us. And, the amount of sacrifice that people put out there, in the cold, helping people it was unbelievable.
Let me ask you this:
It really was.
So, how from the time that you got there until the time that things kind of wrapped up, how many days went by, and what was the final outcome?
6 days it went by. Nobody that I'm aware of in our group was directly arrested for any activities that we did. The pipeline got, delayed by the easement being granted right before we got there with the U.S. Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard. And, there weren't really any fights that I could see or other problems. And so we got out of there with, no deaths, mission accomplished, and nobody doing hard jail time. So
right.
it was a mission success, despite all that.
It was a major success. I mean, the fact that legislation got taken care of with Senator Barbara Boxer and Phyllis Young, it was all filmed before a crowd of a couple thousand in a room. That phone call took place. But the center, I got to say it because Wes was there, and I know he's still processing it, just like I'm processing it. But the ceremony, the actual healing ceremony, that took the cake and then some. And there wasn't a dry eye in the place. I've never seen anything like that in my life. It was a once-in-a-lifetime thing. It was a complete changeover in the historical record. And the most noblest things to do in any spiritual path is forgiveness. And this took place with Wesley Clark leading it. I have to say, for the record, I'm very proud of the guy for not really knowing him that long. What I saw was what needed to be said for a very, very, very long time. That our government officials, our federal government, and our own citizens had never achieved. And he apologized, and the cameras were flashing, and the film was going off everywhere. And everybody that was in that room knew why they came, and all the effort, all the sacrifice, and everything to reach that moment was absolutely totally worth it. So kudos to Wes for doing that. I'll never forget it.
Well, thanks, dude, but you're going to make me blush now.
So as you understand it now, what's the fate of the pipeline?
State of the pipeline's on hold until they get an environmental impact report. That could take 6 to 8 months, and I recommended to the tribe that they hire a third-party firm to ghost the government firm and release all the numbers and the data online as they do it, so it can't be cooked.
Excellent. So what, did everybody just pack up and
now,
leave?
I'll tell you this for the record, John, is that this isn't over. Some of the highest people in power responded. There is action right now as we speak to speak to some of the powers that be about the situation. It got the world's attention. I know that after I got a look at how many banks they're up against, it's 35 of the biggest banks on earth, right, against this small group. It's not remotely fair, and the only way they're going to win this, in my opinion, is obsolescence. I had long meetings with some of the senior people, and I said, this is, you can win, but I think it's going to have to win through proving to oil companies and senior politicians and economists that obsolescence, and proving the ones and zeros, and transitioning over to green technology, renewables, and protecting our earth. That's what will bloom from all of this, and that is not going to end. And I know people in Washington D.C. are meeting about it. There are people in L.A. I know are meeting about it, and there's press people right now that I'm in touch with that are going to be taking this story to the next place where it needs to go. So our efforts will not be wasted. They will continue.
Well, that's beautiful. And now let me ask you this. What is the mechanism that's been put in place to keep the awareness high? Because there's so much information hitting everybody all the time, even if it's really big stuff. In a couple of weeks they move on from it,
Right. that's how stories tend to come and go. But I know for a fact well, just so you know, there was major censorship there. There was 3 or 4 press conferences that Phyllis Young spoke in front of thousands of people, and people Facebook Lived it and all that stuff, and they took out all the audio of it. I'm still trying to get access to the footage from one of the TV crews that were there that has the actual, the lowdown and the hammer dropping by Phyllis Young, explaining what was going on, what they're going to do, where they stand, and where they're going. And I'm still trying to get that right now. I got the audio of it, the visual of it. Those things, people don't even know about that yet. They don't even know what's happened. They don't even know that there's a bigger agenda and story behind this, that most of the big TV network crews, I spoke to NBC there, I spoke to the French press there, I spoke to independent freelance journalists there, and a lot of them had no idea what the hell was going on. They just were there to see the standoff, but they didn't realize the resolution of the problem is already in movement now. And I know Wes is, he is very involved in the protection of the planet and climate change and all these other things as well, because that's where it's going. That's where it's going. That's where it's going to have to go, because our dependency on fossil fuels and the pollution and what we've done. People are look. I met some of the people that were injured there. Those people, 10 years from now, nobody's going to remember them. They're going to have physical, permanent injuries from being beaten up. The woman who had her arm blown off, I did not meet. The woman that had her eye popped out, I did meet. And she is having to get funds to go get surgery out of country to deal with that. But those are the real heroes, and those people cannot be forgotten. And they're not going to. I'm not going to allow that to fade away into nothing, because they're the ones that really really paid the price before we arrived. So that there's much more that's going to be coming out. I can assure you that.
Let me ask you this, just one more time. Who did the beating on this woman particularly?
I don't know the person. I don't even know. I think Wes probably knows the outfit. Who paid for the cops? It's Morton County sheriffs and probably the hired mercs that were there. I can't pinpoint it on one person. The
hired mercs that were there, I was told, were a company called Tiger Swan. It has contracts throughout the Arab world.
Say that again. That was a little faint for me.
Yeah, I was told that the company that was there controlled the private security and did the counterintelligence work against us. It's called Tiger Swan. That they're a U.S.-based mercenary company that operates along the southeastern seaboard, and that they have contracts in several Arab states.
Okay.
Yeah, those people, those guys, and there's going to be lawsuits that are going to go on forever. These guys are going to have permanent scratches on the record. They will always be known for what they did, beating up women and children and permanently injuring many people, not to mention the tear gas. I mean, I was at the airport flying out, and I happened to meet 2 freelance journalists that were basically screwed, stuck there. They were flying out of town. They got to come back for court dates because they were tear gassed, caged, charged with crimes for just being members of the press. And this young journalist was saying, yeah, I've got to spend another $1,800 to come all the way out here for these trumped up charges that they against me just for me covering it. So the freedom of the press, there is none. Remember that, everybody. That we don't have a free flow of information going on anymore. That's not going on anymore. I know it. I saw it. I heard it. And he was this young guy was just, he couldn't get out of there. He didn't have any money to get out of there, and the weather came in and screwed up everything. And another thing, for the record too, Wes notified me of a story on the way out. I was going to the airport, and I'm just waiting.
And I don't know about the veracity of that story. I was just provided a link on Facebook.
Yeah. There was, and I haven't had any ability to follow up on this, but it was printed in the Bismarck Tribune that a pilot had passed away or been killed in a plane crash or something happened. And then the lead in line was that he was geoengineering the weather before we arrived to make it snow. And I showed this to some reporters in the conference room, and I said, look at this. This came out of the Bismarck Tribune, and, you know, their jaws wide open, and they're like, oh, I thought they couldn't do this, and da-da-da-da-da-da. And I said, well, of course, they can do this. The tech's been there forever. William Reich, the cloudbuster, he invented it. He started it. So that came out the day I was headed to the airport, and I said, does anybody know who this guy is? Who paid for it? What's the timeline? Has anybody called the Tribune? I don't have answers to those questions because we were headed out to the airport as soon as that happened. And it just added, it just indicated to me that, and to Wes, that there was a lot of people that did not want us to succeed. But we did. Everybody did there. It was a success.
You mentioned Tiger something a minute ago. What was that? That was a little unclear. I couldn't really pick it up.
Tiger Swan. They're a mercenary company that operates partially for the U.S. government out of the southeastern seaboard of the United States.
Are you saying Tiger Swan?
Yep.
Like a cat and a bird?
Yep.
Okay.
You can read about them. There's a journalist named Jeremy Scahill that's done a lot of exposés in both The Intercept and Rolling Stone about all this stuff. He's written about them pretty extensively.
Gotcha. Okay, I'll just take a peek at them, see what's up. Tiger Swan. Okay. All right, so we're thinking there's not going to be any, yes, Tiger Swan. Solutions to uncertainty. Vulnerability management, true diligence, capacity building, guardian angel.
I will say they're pretty good at psyops. They're not bad at it.
Interesting.
They're skilled in what they do.
Yeah, so it would appear their website looks pretty good. I'll tell you that. They've got asset tracking, safety and security, NIFE, N-I-F-E, safety and security solutions. That's a registered trademark of something. Due diligence, construction, secure executive housing and life support, advisory services, and service integration and management. That sounds like a pretty, that sounds like an all-rounder, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever happened to Craft International? Does anybody know?
No idea.
Okay, that's all right. All right, so...
I'll be honest with you, I don't know much about these private companies at all, other than having operated against them out in the field out there.
All right, so there's no plan to return to Standing Rock anytime soon. 6 to 8 months, environmental study, that'll be the...
Cross the river.
Sorry, say that again?
Not unless they cross the river and break the law.
And somebody will give you a heads up on that, should it occur, yeah?
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
Okay. All right, gents. Well, any other observations or comments that you'd like to add? I'm glad everybody made it out okay. I'm glad that the situation was defused.
I'm really glad everyone's going to make it home for Christmas and get to spend time with their families. But, you know, this is just the start of a bigger thing. Basically save our children's future from being stolen from them, as well as a lot of their freedoms. This country's at a troublesome crossroads, and it's going to take people self-organizing and standing up for what they know is right without any expectation of reward or pay or anything else. And I encourage people to start their own groups and start going out there and trying to do good deeds just for the sake of doing them, because that's the only way we're really going to change this country.
I think you're right.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I would agree with that, and I would say that based upon what I've seen and witnessed there, this is a potentially not potentially. There's a new beginning now, and Wesley's created a relationship, has have all the veterans that participated there, a healing and a new beginning, an alliance of some very special people that have participated in this country and are in fact leading this country to a new place. So I'm looking forward to knowing and participating in what's going to be coming next. And I would agree. Everybody's got to self-organize, and they got to do the right thing, and they got to expend a little effort in doing so. We proved that the effort and organization put forth was beneficial for everyone, and I'm proud to be able to participate in the entire thing.
No, it was a lot of fun. You know, I answered some hater on Twitter this morning who got on me about asking who was in charge out there. And the simplest answer for who was in charge out there was everybody. That's the way it should be.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
Well, you know, I think there's reason to be hopeful with this new administration coming in. Got some real heavy hitters coming in to kind of take charge of things in an adult manner. And certainly, Wesley, it couldn't be that tough for you to get a message to the president if you needed to. I'm thinking you're one person away from him.
I hold a lot of hope out for Donald Trump. You know, he has really reset the playing board on how stuff can get done. I know a lot of people are scared about some of his choices so far, but I firmly believe that every human being has the potential to do good in this life. And I think he's got the potential to do more good than anyone who's come before him. So we'll just have to see how it all plays out.
Yes, indeed. All right. What are you working on next?
Don't know yet. I think we're going to try and go up, and instead of doing a protest, we're just going to try and replace people's pipes up there in Flint, Michigan, so they got clean water.
No kidding.
I don't know exactly when that'll happen. I've kind of Michael Wood Jr. is pretty much going to be running the whole veteran stand organization because he had access to all the money and he's got a background doing activism and stuff. For me personally, this is more of a spiritual journey, I guess. But I'm definitely going to help them in what they do up there in any way I can, and look forward to providing people with clean water and making the world a better place.
Well, look, when you get up there, it would be most welcome if you would just maybe consider giving us a report from the ground on what's really going on. I mean, all we have is the stuff that comes out, unless you actually go there, which is what you fellas did. You went to Standing Rock to see what was up. You go to Flint to find out.
And we're gonna go up to Flint, but I think my guess is that'll be in a couple months, just because of the super cold weather.
Oh yeah,
it's gonna put a lot of people out if we try and do this changeover, you know, in the freezing cold instead of when it's a little bit warmer for them.
Yeah, it gets pretty nippy in Michigan.
I'd love to get it done, you know, the day after tomorrow.
Yeah,
because the sooner they've got clean water, the sooner they're going to be healthier. You know, lead affects violence levels in communities, and it hampers development of the human brain and poisons the human brain.
Oh yes.
So, you know, a lot of the other problems that exist in Flint are causally related to the lead in their water.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true. And don't forget about the chromium-6 that's in 75% of U.S. water. I'm sure they got a pretty good dose of it up there. It'd be really good to hear an update from you on exactly how bad that situation is, you know, because I have not found that you have embellished anything. You've shot totally straight with me and with the audience. So I'd like for you to do it again. When you get up to Flint, reach out and let us know what's up,
man,
will you?
Definitely. Listen, my only, you know, fear in being straight shooter is that people will see what a jackass I am.
Yeah, well, don't worry, you're in pretty good company, okay?
But we're you know, our goal is to do good stuff and not get rewarded for it, but kind of spread the truth and give everyone because listen, man, there is nothing special about me.
Well,
anybody could have done what I did. Anyone.
Yeah, well, the difference is they didn't.
That's a real lesson to learn out of this.
Yeah, I get that, but don't sell yourself short because you did it. It's one thing to talk about it. It's quite another thing to do it. And you two did it. So, no, that's exceptional. That if more people would do this, I'm pretty sure there'd be fewer problems that left unattended just get bigger and just suck more people into the problematic vortex. So, no, you're doing really good work. And don't forget, the truth-telling jackass is to be feared, one of the most feared creatures on the earth. Because if you taunt them because they have told you the truth, they get a very serious, very powerful kick. And sometimes it's a righteous kick, usually. So just don't go changing. Just do what you do. Keep us in the loop. Leave a trail in case we need to pick it up. And stay safe out there, okay?
Well, I'd like to tell you that, I don't drink alcohol, and I got no major depression, and I'm not suicidal.
Excellent.
So if anything ever happens to me, I've already told you the names of the potential perpetrators in this interview.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, man. It's been a real pleasure, brother. I hope you got a good day coming up ahead of you.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you very much. Stay safe out there. God bless you. And
All right, bye-bye.
by the way, Merry Christmas.
Oh,
Merry Christmas to you, too.
All right.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So,
there was a love fest
Yeah, I guess.
between John B. Wells, a conservative radio show host that does, I think he got fired. I'm not sure exactly why, but this is a guy that he reported to, that Wes and presumably James Martinez reported to prior to going to Standing Rock.
Yeah.
And then right after they got out of Standing Rock. And they were immediately on board with the people that later on went to form QAnon, the people that were fundraising for Michael Flynn, the people that were coordinating the mercenaries like the Oath Keepers to go protest all over the country. These are the same people that were the anti-vaxxers. These are the same people that are against books, certain books in schools, anti-LGBTQ people, same people. And this whole MAGA movement, QAnon campaign that we have been dealing with throughout the pandemic, it started right at Standing Rock with these figures, and John B. Wells is getting the report directly from Wes Clark right after he leaves there.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow we're not supposed to believe that they were all coordinated from the beginning.
Yep, exactly.
He's like, don't go changing. You are so great.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like breaking his arm off to pat this guy on the back.
Exactly.
To let him know he's so good. And of course, full of theatrics as usual, Wes is like, I don't drink alcohol. I got no major depression, and I'm not suicidal. You said you were suicidal, that you were like in the fetal position, and that you were afraid of, that you were almost driven to suicide by talking to me and Duke.
Mm-hmm.
You said you were so depressed after you left Standing Rock, you didn't trust anybody, and that you had to go to a hospital to get yourself checked out, and that you were diagnosed with CTE. And he tells this guy, I don't drink alcohol, like he wants them to know. I don't use substances. I don't alter my mind with substances. I have, I don't know how many hours of recordings with him doing bong rip after bong rip. Like,
Oh, yeah.
loudly. He doesn't care. And he tells you, like, if this guy is not, everybody was out at Standing Rock partying and doing substances, according to him. He just told you there was a guy running around doing meth. He saw people out there. They were having dinner with Francis Fisher and Josh Fox and Samira Khan, and they had a bottle of wine on the table.
Mm-hmm.
You're telling me that he didn't partake, and even though everyone said that he looked like he was coked out of his mind or on meth the entire time that he was there, and that he himself reported he only slept 1 hour a night, that, oh, he's an angel fallen from heaven. He would never. Of course not. It seems to me like these people that produced this American Psyop podcast series are either willfully ignorant or they are complicit in propping up a fraud. Somebody that perpetrated not just a psyop on the people of Standing Rock and the people of America ongoing up until this very moment with his I am cult. And I am, part of this cult that I am a victim of. I think that they are doing a disservice to the country by continuing to platform a known liar. Mm-hmm. And let me just show you that he was talking about this way back when, not just on this radio show. This is a post from one of my recent shows. I just took a screen grab of it, where I posted one of his Facebook posts in which he's talking about, Michael Flynn.
Okay.
And he says, first, let me tell you that a thing or two about information warfare. I watched the former Yugoslavia descend into murder and mayhem. I watched Syria descend into murder and mayhem. I watched Russia pull apart former Soviet republics, most notably Ukraine. And I watched Erdogan accumulate power for years, his final act being a phony coup which has allowed him to round up and execute enemies. The first thing to understand about information warfare is that it is useless unless the hostile party funds both the left and the right for civil disorder and intrastate violence. It's always the goal in weakening the opponent. Let me read that again to you, because that is exactly what happened at Standing Rock and what has been going on in this country since Standing Rock. Information warfare, which is useless unless the hostile party funds both the left and the right for civil disorder and intrastate violence. That's always the goal in weakening the opponent. And then he says, our election was hacked last fall, meaning in 2016. One of the key players, Michael Flynn, worked for both Russia and Turkey. And then he goes on to say he called Cenk Uygur on June 13th to report that he was afraid that one of his reporters, I'm assuming Jordan Sheridan, might be wittingly or unwittingly involved in the messaging to set up a false flag attack, because he was saying it was going to happen in Flint, Michigan around that time. In the United States last year, in order to, Trump's president. Cenk told me he was on a plane in Milan. So it's talking about in the time period of 2016 to 2017 when people were out at Flint. And he talked about how can Cenk move freely and go back to, go to Turkey and come back. So he was questioning Cenk and his Turkey connections.
Yeah.
He was questioning Michael Flynn and his Turkey connections, but he was not questioning his own Turkey connections to Sedef Buyakataman and her daddy.
Exactly.
And the Turkish Forum and the meeting that he put together with General Wes Clark, his daddy, and him at his Los Angeles home. He was not telling the public about how James Martinez had been at his house for weeks and weeks right before he went to Standing Rock, and that he got him sucked into the I Am cult. Never mentioned any of that stuff. In fact, when he's interviewed here, he wants everyone to know he's completely a straight arrow, doesn't even drink alcohol, has no major depression issues, and is not suicidal. He wasn't even depressed right after leaving Standing Rock, which he claimed to me that he definitely was, and to everyone else around him, because of the fact that he got kicked out of his own veterans organization. Well, no, because he lets the mask fall with John B. Wells, and he lets him know that he's fine, that he had a great spiritual journey, and that he's going to be involved in helping Michael A. Wood Jr. going forward. And as he says in that post on Facebook I just showed you, he had already identified in 2016 the involvement of Russia and Turkey. I really don't understand, Duke, how all of the people that were involved in propping up this guy, including Dave Troy, who was writing essays with this man that I showed you in my last show, along with one of the producers of this show, Jack Bryan. I don't know how all three of those folks didn't bother to listen to the people that they were interviewing, like Arturo Tafoya, or didn't look at all of the work that we had already produced. You didn't mind slandering us in your production here at A Mexican Crossing Lines.
Well, they actually took one of our shows and stripped the audio from it and used it in their show. So they obviously had a way of having access to our shows because they use parts of one of them or parts of several of them. So they knew that content was out there.
But they didn't listen to it, or they ignored all of the evidence that's already been available to them this whole time.
Yeah.
One of the most disappointing ones to me was Dave Troy, because I was following his work and I sent him messages
Oh, yeah.
over a year ago telling him about how the things that he was saying about people connected to QAnon went all the way back to the nexus of Standing Rock and included Wes Clark and his connections, which were very problematic. And he never responded. And also, the professor, Guadalupe Correa Cabrera, that I was producing, did produce 2 scientific papers that were published in journals, scientific journals, within the last year, reached out to Dave Troy, because I guess she knows him in the circles that she's working in academia, and said to him that, you know, we were publishing this paper, that he was publishing this paper with me, and that Dave Troy, given that what he was studying, may want to look into the things that I had been researching. And he did not want to speak to me.
Oh.
He made it very clear he didn't want that information. There's a reason why people like Jack Bryan, the Midas Touch, Dave Troy, and Dr. Hassan and Jim Stewartson do like the monkeys that see no evil and hear no evil and speak no evil when it comes to Wes Clark, when it comes to the people that, like Tulsi Gabbard and all of those phonies like Cassandra Fairbanks, Trevor Fitzgibbons, all of those people that pretend that they're for progressive people and for progressive causes, when it turns out that they have been supporting foreign interests on behalf of foreign countries that are enemies of the United States. And when it comes to upholding the lies of a man like Wes Clark, who victimized everyone at Standing Rock and continues to victimize people through podcasts like the American Psyop series. But I think the most ironic thing is a thread by Dave Troy in which he is lambasting the media for being dumb, for not seeing the things that he's now talking about publicly, for not noticing how all of these entities were harming the United States and were colluded in doing so. Does he not see himself in his own tweets?
Yeah.
He posted this in June of 21. Assume, he said, that your movement, your club, your party is being infiltrated by bad actors. And sometimes government types too. Learn to know the difference. Americans are woefully naive, and they think anyone who shows up is a good faith actor. That's just not the case. Well, we'll move past this, but we need a lot more of this kind of journalism exposing infiltrators. This New York Times is a good start, but good Lord, why did it take 10 years for this to come to the fore? I mean, it's right here, plain as day. Eric Prince doing the same thing in 2016 and 2017 with Standing Rock. Yeah, it's plain as day, Dave Troy, and you missed it. And so did Dr. Hassan, and so did Jack Bryan, and so did Emily Bix, and so does the Midas Touch. You missed it by a long shot. How ironic. Maybe you should take your own advice. Woefully inadequate doesn't even begin to describe your incompetence, all of you. And I will be digging deeper into all of this. I have an excellent show for you next time, showing you more of all of the destructive properties of the people involved with Wes Clark. I'm going to show you how much muck and mire these people had to ignore to put out their poocast. So don't miss our next episode here on A Mexican Crossing Lines with Cindy Gomez-Schempp.
And Duke Gomez-Schempp.
You're listening to 88.1 FM, KPPPLP, Fargo Moorhead, where we are adding local color to your airwaves. Here in the Minnesota, North Dakota area, where we experienced Wes Clark, the Veterans Stand for Standing Rock, and the year-long protest that left millions of dollars of damages and caused all of us to have permanent PTSD when dealing with anyone associated with Wes Clark and these mercenaries. I ask you to come back and continue to listen so that you can expose Wes Clark, the Veterans Stand for Standing Rock, and all of these bad actors in the future. God bless and good night.